Hello, all, and welcome to a new episode of the Horror Countdown Podcast. I'm your host, Donna Nelly, and with me tonight is my special guest, Raul Rivera.
Hello.
Hey,
It's a pleasure to be here, man. I'm so excited to talk some movies with you. Um,
mm,
man, I just love talking horror, and I love your podcast. I've listened to some episodes. Like I said earlier before we started recording, I just got caught up today, but I love your podcast, and man, I'm so excited you're having me on.
I'm glad to hear both of that. Thanks for the listenership, and I'm definitely glad to talk about this because, like we were saying, this is kind of an under the radar kind of part of the genre where not a lot of people are familiar with or think there's as much there that the you kn- is m- the it's pretty undervalued. But we're going to be discussing our favorite post 2000 slashers. So
Yeah, it's
this
like the
was
stepchild of slasher movies.
yeah, that's kind of where we were going. Was that everybody always looks at the golden age in the 80s. I mean, I've already done a show. You've already, it's recorded, but I mean, you're not going to be aware of this. But by the time this is released, you'll have heard it. But I've already discussed, 80 slashers beforehand. So talking 2000s, where not a lot of people are going to be familiar or think it's as deep as it is. I think this is going to be a lot more fun than what it most people are going to expect.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, this was your choice. So give a little bit more info on the topic choice and anything else that helped shape your list.
Well, I'm a huge slasher fan. I love slashers. They are my favorite subgenre of horror movies because they are violent. They can be repulsive. They can be gory. They can be diabolical. They can be mean spirited. They can be everything. They can be goofy. They can be uh, mean, like super mean spirited, reality based. They can be all sorts of things. It's such a wide umbrella when you talk about just slashers. So I love slashers, and of course I love 80 slashers. I mean, my favorite slasher of all time is Jason Voorhees, and uh, Friday the 13th is my favorite uh, franchise. But as much as everyone talks about the golden age of slashers in the 80s, I love modern slashers because it's really fun to see where things have gone since the fall and re-rise of the slashers that started with Scream back in '96. And it's interesting how everyone knows the rules of slashers nowadays and what modern directors, modern filmmakers, modern writers will do to rewrite those rules or circumvent those rules or ignore those rules altogether. And I think that more people need to talk about how awesome modern slashers are because they're freaking dope.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I was telling you before we recorded that my list initially started just basically pulling my top ratings off of my IMDb account, and I came up with a list of about 30 just based on nines and tens. I mean, I know that's not going to mean much, but just looking at the amount of quality that's here in this kind of era where yeah, maybe there'll be I'm kind of suspecting that there's going to be some crossover here and there, but looking at a point where there's a lot more than you'd kind of expect, just based on, like I said, I was kind of shocked that I had as much as I did because I didn't expect to have as I mean, just going off of nines and tens, like the best of the best, like the ones that you really want to remember and think about. I wasn't expecting to come up with around 30. Just not even just looking off of what I've seen, and I mean, I'm not going to claim I've seen everything, but I'd like to think the major ones already, and just looking at those kinds of ratings already, there was a lot more than I anticipated, and that kind of was like, wow, holy crap, there's more than just four or five titles, because I think everybody kind of suspects the same four or five, and I'm pretty sure those will probably be some of the crossovers we'll talk about in a few minutes. But Yeah, there's a lot more here than I think most people are willing to admit, and it was kind of fun to go back and revisit some of these because I was like, wow, I haven't seen that in a while, and looking back and remembering why I gave it that rating, yeah, I remember really liking this. So there's more here than I think a lot of people are going to be familiar with.
Absolutely, man. And I think, oh man, I just had a complete brain fart right now. But when I was going through my list, I wanted to watch the movies that I hadn't seen before, and I didn't get to all of them. There's a few movies that everyone really speaks highly of that I have not watched and didn't get around to for this episode. But there are some that I really enjoy, and I came up with about 40 myself. And some can be not read as slashers. I'm kind of being a little loose with the terminology and the categorization of what is a slasher movie. But
Yeah,
it's my list, so
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, suck it. And but I had a lot of fun compiling this list, and honestly, there are so many movies that could easily rotate within that top 10, on a second, third, fourth, fifth viewing. So I don't know. For me, this is not a definitive list of my top 10 at all. It's more of a top 10 list of how I feel in the moment right now today. Tomorrow, even it could be different.
The totally. I mean, like I said, I can't claim to have seen all of them. So the fact that as of right now, this is my list is probably going to fluctuate if I actually gave it some extra thought. You know, I can do this list at the end of the year and give you a completely different ranking. I can probably. I'm pretty confident with my top five. I think my top five are probably pretty set. It would take something, it'd be a miracle that I would want to see because I would want to see a film that good that it made me reshuffle my top five. But I don't know if it's out there that I haven't seen yet. So more than likely, I would say my back half would probably fluctuate a little. But I mean, if there's a film good enough out there that makes my top five, I want to see it. And why the hell haven't you told us about it? So,
See, that's the beauty. I'm not even comfortable with my number one.
hmm,
That's how much this list can fluctuate for me, and that's how much I guess that's how indecisive I am because, like I said, I love slashers, and anytime I see a modern slasher that just blows me away, I always think to myself, "Oh, that's the best slasher I've seen in so long," and it immediately shoots up to the top of my favorites list. And I guess I don't know, maybe I'm too nice, but it's how I feel. I can't change the way I
eh,
feel. So, like I said, it's my list. And to be clear, just because my list, this is my top 10 list, doesn't mean that these are good movies that I recommend. They are just movies that I enjoy and I thought were, you know, fun to experience.
oh yeah. People who followed me will know that I have kind of off the wall taste, and just because I give something a 10 doesn't mean it's necessarily a 10 out of 10 in the genre. So yeah, my tastes are not necessarily ones that are going to be readily accepted by the vast majority. So like I said, mine are going to probably change pretty rapidly. So with that said, let's start in and get our number 10s.
All right. You want me to go first?
Oh, yeah, yes. So no, I was actually pulling my list up so I can make it visible while I'm talking. um, uh,
Oh.
yeah, programmer's note there. I actually inadvertently put my list on the wrong side of my screen, so I was just readjusting it there. So my number 10 is 2005's Dark Ride.
Oh man, that almost made my list.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this. So, real briefly, it's about a group of friends on, I believe it's a call. I think it's spring break. There's some kind of school vacation that they're off from. They're in college and they're going on a trip. And one of them decides to check out this abandoned amusement park that used to operate when he was a kid, just for nostalgia's sake. and they visit one of the attractions, which is a dark ride where a mysterious killer is living inside and begins hunting them down one by one. Man, this movie is so much fun. Just an old classic, simple formula: get a bunch of people in a remote location, and then just stick them with an imposing killer and just brutally murder them one by one. It's simple. It's what works, and it's far better than what you'd think. Great set pieces, fantastic atmosphere. That place is absolutely milked to within an inch of its existence, and it's all the better for it. I'm not necessarily a fan of the final half, which is why it's as high on my list. Um, I don't necessarily like the final 20 minutes. I think that's kind of where it meanders a little. It runs on a little bit longer than what it should, and it kind of goes some areas that I'm not really a fan of. But I mean, the first hour or so of this is slasher gold. So number 10 on my list is Dark Ride.
I love that movie, man. It's weird that that you say that the last half kind of went on a little too long. I think it was like from start to finish. I don't think I was ever like, oh man, this movie's just ran its course. I was on board for the entire ride. See what I did there?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, for me, I'm much more a fan of like the 85 to 95 minute film, especially in this kind of a genre. I don't really like it when they run, an hour 40 or so. You really have to do something special to to keep my attention when it goes that long. So, this being like an hour 45 or something like that, it for me at least it dragged on just a bit more than I want for this kind of a film. But for the most part, it's only just that last half. That's kind of really where my issues come from with the running time. I mean, other than that, yeah, I mean, this thing is just fast and to the point. So it's not a huge issue. It's just for me, I think it runs maybe 5 minutes too long.
Yeah. I still love this movie. I mean it I don't know. It might have been the decapitated blowjob, but this movie just won me won me over so good.
Yeah, that's a huge selling point. Yeah, I was a fan of that one too. That's one of my favorite kills. What was that other one where he takes that huge thing and I think he bludgeons that one guy over the head with it?
Oh man.
Yeah,
And yeah.
yeah. There's that one where he just like totally like caves that one guy's head in.
Mhm.
Yeah,
This movie has such fun kills. They are gory, they're visceral. I mean, they are low budget, but they did a lot with what they had.
yeah. And I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean that location is just fantastic. That I mean that the atmosphere in that place is just fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love it. Love it.
Yeah. All
So
right.
my number 10 is 2009's Laid to Rest. The first movie and I guess the two movies with the Chrome Skull Killer. It's just about a girl who wakes up in a coffin with amnesia, doesn't know who she is, what she's doing there, or what's going on really. And she's stalked by a lunatic carrying really cool knives with like a webcam on his shoulder, wearing a metal skull mask, and it is simple, and anyone who helps her out gets in this killer's way meets a visceral, bloody, violent, gory end. They're like they're I, one of the kills in this movie is when the killer like tomahawk throws a knife, well, off screen. You don't see him throw it, but you see the knife hit this guy in the face and like wiggle around in there, and like blink and you miss it type thing, but it looks like he got hit in the face with a knife. It looks so good, and I just love the kills in this movie. It's really good. Subpar acting, subpar plot. Like it's not a perfect movie, but it's a fun slasher, and I have a blast every time I watch it.
I do too. That's one of my honorable mentions for exactly those reasons. I much prefer the kills to just about everything else on here. A few of the setups aren't bad. I do like the scene where he stalks her through the barn, and she comes across the couple that own the house, and then you have the confrontation there. I mean, that's kind of fun. And then the police station massacre is just fantastic. I love that scene, but yeah, a lot of it kind of falls apart when you think about it. So it kind of, for me, that was one of the small factors that kind of pushed it down. But no, yeah, it's still a lot of fun, and I definitely agree. Those kills are fantastic. So
Absolutely. And but it's not a movie that you need to really try and pick apart or look for logic in, because I mean it's just a dumb slasher, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to my number nine. I went with 2015's or 2016. I've seen conflicting dates on this one, so I'm not entirely sure. But it's Lost After Dark.
Ooh, that's one that didn't even make my list. I don't think I've seen this one.
Oh, okay. So before I mention much more about this, this is kind of a sentimental pick. I do know the screenwriter for this. He's a friend of mine. And I mean like a legitimate friend of mine. I've talked with him several times about it, and I've he showed me the film, and I was just blown away. So the film is about a group of teens at a high school who are about to go to their prom when they get lost on this backroads alley, and the bus gets stuck, so they're unable to move. And they venture into this farmhouse where this deranged killer lives, and he just begins hunting them down and picking them off one by one. So, again, it's kind of really simple, kind of old school throwback kind of a feel, but this hits the atmosphere of the '80s perfectly. I mean, if you told me that this was some undiscovered film in the '80s that just you happen to discover and somebody put out a new version of it, I would totally believe them. This it looks and feels exactly like an '80s slasher. The characters are actually fun and enjoyable. Nobody's, that asshole prick that nobody likes. Nobody's, pulling pranks on anybody. There's very, very little drama between everyone. They're all, it's all a group of friends and they all look and feel like it. And the kills aren't necessarily the most standoutish, but it's the atmosphere for me. The small farmhouse atmosphere works perfectly. The killer is just brutal and intimidating. Not, like I said, not the greatest of kills, but they're serviceable for what they are in this kind of a film. And it's a fun, fast, zippy film. It gets in, gets out, and it has a lot of fun with it. And you even get a fun little side plot where the principal is wondering where everybody is and realizes that they're not there. So he's trying to send out search parties for everybody, trying to figure out what's going on, which is actually kind of funny because the principal is Robert Patrick. So it's the guy from the Terminator.
Nice.
Yeah, he plays the principal, and he's kind of wondering why everybody's not showing up because he's trying to keep tabs on everyone. So yeah, it's a fun time. It just, like I said, it's probably the most accurate '80s throwback I've seen in terms of like just nailing the atmosphere. The setups are just on point, and everything about it is just really, really fun. And I mean, like I said, I know the writer to this personally, so kind of helps out in that regard. But yeah, if you haven't seen it, definitely check this one out. It's either 2015 or 16. I've seen conflicting rumors, and I'm not entirely sure which one. I talked to the guy who wrote it, and he said that the the script was written in 2014. It was filmed in 15, and they got most of the distribution out in 16. So I'm not entirely sure what that means, but if you see it like that and you see a film called Lost After Dark, give it a watch. So
I just added that to my watch list, and it sounds right up my alley. So
yeah,
I'm going to be giving that a gander as soon as possible.
definitely would love to hear your thoughts on it because I love this movie. It's like I said, it's pure old school '80s throwback. So
Well, I'm here for it, man. I love 80s throwbacks. I think man, homages to the 80s and the slashers of yesteryear, good lord. I think make the best modern day slashers, whether they're satirical or a genuine homage. But I think I think that's a formula for a great modern day slasher. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna be checking that out.
Cool. All right. So your number 9.
My number nine is another kind of throwback to not just 80s slashers, but also the exploitation movies of the 70s and 80s. And it is a raunchy movie. It's a gross movie. It is irreverent. It is repulsive. And it makes Rob Zombie writing look like freaking Shakespeare. And it is 2008's Gutterballs.
Mm.
And it is, I mean, the tagline for the movie is "The Night He Came Hard." So it's a, it's about a movie where the inciting incident is a brutal rape. And when I mean, not so much just a singular rape, but like uh just a gang rape is essentially is what it is. And it was really hard to watch, but what comes afterwards, like um, the kills that follow this are some of the most creative and like almost mean spirited kills. The thing is that they're not played in reality. It's so stylized. It's just silly. But I mean, there are decapitations, there are bowling implements used in creative fashion. There is a double murder by 69 sexual positions. So it is it is a weird movie, and no one, absolutely no one in this movie is likable, and you cannot wait to see people die. And the end is just an absolute bloodbath that makes absolutely no sense. This movie is not about plot, it's not about acting, it's not about set piece, it's not about lighting or competent filmmaking. It's just an instrument used to show awful people and justify them being killed in awful ways. And for that alone, it's worth a watch. A lot of people are not going to make it past that initial rape scene because that is brutal and hard to watch. But for anyone that does make it past that, I think that is the rest of the movie. You're going to have fun with it. So that's my number nine.
Nice. Yeah, this is on my to watch list. I've never been able to find this anywhere. I know it just came out from I don't believe I don't believe it's Vinegar Syndrome. It's one of the other exploitation companies that just put it out. Why is my
I
mind
have
blanking?
I have this on Blu-ray.
What? Yeah. Like I said,
I can check. Hold on real quick.
okay. Yeah. Like I said, I know it just came out from like some kind of underground like extreme record not record some like extreme distribution company. I don't believe it's Vinegar Syndrome, but yeah, that's kind of like the first time I've ever really heard that there was like any kind of access to it. But I was never able to put in a bid fast enough to get it because it sold out quickly. So yeah, I've kind of been trying to track it down ever since. So it's one that I don't have or I have seen, but I'm definitely down to try to find it.
It's the Blu-ray I got, the spine just says MVD visual. I don't know.
So okay, so if it's MVD, then more than likely it may be Unearthed Films.
Oh, yes, it does say Unearthed Films.
Okay, yeah, because MVD distributes Unearthed. So yeah, if it's through them and it's an extreme company, more than likely it's Unearthed. Okay, that makes sense. Because I was gonna say it's too new for Vinegar Syndrome. They don't really touch like the modern stuff. They stick to the old schools. So yeah, if you say it's MVD, then yeah, that must be Unearthed. And if it's on there, I would probably bet that's them.
Yep. And like I said, a lot of people are not gonna make it through the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie. But I if anyone can find this movie, I encourage you to hold your breath, grit your teeth, and make it through it, because what comes afterwards is fun.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna try my best to track it down. So, moving to my number eight, I kind of was debating whether or not this one would make it as high as it does on my list. I really, in all honesty, I should probably have this higher, but uh, it's one of those. I like the other films more, and I really feel bad putting it this low on this type of a list. I went with Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon, um, from 2006. Another one of those. It's 2006 or 2007. I'm not. I really wish we'd get confirmed dates on this, but
I think it's one of those where initial release and wide release were kind of separate years. So
yeah, that's kind of like I said. I think that's one of the big things. I mean, I know that there was like a small theatrical run one year, and then it just kind of just plopped out onto like DVD or cable television like the year after. So, but that's besides the point. So the film concerns a documentarian who's looking to profile the events of this small town serial killer who's about to go on this what he calls an anniversary massacre, where he's looking to knock off a bunch of teens in a ritual that's looking to pay homage to a specific incident in his past, and you know, things just go from there. I mean, this is just one of the smartest, most cleverest, and just absolutely fun entries I've ever seen. I mean, the idea of showing not just what the killer's doing, but making him this affable, likable guy who's preparing to do the most heinous things possible, but just with a smile on his face the entire time, and be like, oh yeah, I gotta be running cardio because I gotta keep up with all these other fit 20 somethings who are all into yoga and all these other you know extreme weightlifting and athletics and stuff like that. And I got to brush up on my history, and I got to learn how to set traps for people, slow them down, and do this and do that. And I got to honor my mentors, and Freddie and Jason and Michael, and all of these other kind of badasses throughout history that you know existed and killed long before I did. It plays with all the kinds of genre tropes where the killer's out and about, and you've got the small town sheriff who's trying to hunt him. You've got the librarian who knows all of his secrets, and everybody thinks they're in on it. And then all of a sudden, wham, you get the introduction to the victims, and you get all of their backstory. And this movie is just so much fun. And the inversion that this does around the hour mark, where it switches things up and it takes a documentary feel away from it, but it still kind of has that tone just because of the way it's filmed. It just done to perfection. Cannot I cannot love this movie more. But I like the other films on this list even better. So and like I said, I want this higher, but I can't place it. But number eight, Behind the Mask.
that is a solid pick that I will talk about later.
Cool. Like I said, I want this higher myself. I just can't do it. But kudos to you for kudos to you for doing so. But we'll move on to your number eight.
My number eight is a relatively new film, just came out in 2020, and it is Freaky with Vince Vaughn and Catherine Newton. It's Freaky Friday, except Catherine Newton is her character swaps body with Vince Vaughn, who is a sadistic serial killer. So there's the body swap thing. It's really fun. It's there's some tongue in cheek moments, some like nods to the rules. I think at one point someone says Um, they're running away from the killer, and one of them says, "You're a minority and I'm gay. We're so dead," or something like that. And it's so funny because they obviously exist in a world where horror movies exist, and back in the day you didn't get that, but now people have fun with the rules, and that's the kind of stuff I love about modern horror movies. But this movie is funny when it wants to be, it's scary when it wants to be, and all the kills, there's a running theme, and what I like about my slasher movies, all the kills are brutal and they are fantastic. Obviously, the big hulking villain, when he is big and the hulking, is very Jason Voorhees esque. But honestly, after the switch, Catherine Newton does such a good job of portraying this um, sadistic psycho killer trapped in a teenage girl's body, and somehow she is rocking it and becoming more popular than her actual teenage counterpart. And you know vice versa, Vince Vaughn is convincingly playing a teenage girl trapped in a grown ass man's body. There's a hilarious scene where she's peeing for the first time as an adult male, and she's kind of gandering at what all that plumbing is down there, and it's so funny. This movie truly rides that line between funny and horror, better than most movies that attempt it. So I love this movie.
I will talk about this at a later time.
Woohoo!
So this may be one of the first of my controversial picks for number 7. I really was debating where this one would land on my list. I've kind of been a fan of the other films in the franchise, and initially on first viewing, I wasn't much of a fan, but I've warmed to it so much over the years that I'm kind of I wouldn't say I've come around to it, but I'm kind of more of an apologist than I was for it when I first watched it. It's 2011 Scream 4.
Yes.
So yeah, initially I really didn't get it the first time around. When I first saw it, I kind of thought it was okay at best, but yeah, every time I watch this one, it just grows for me for some reason. I want to say it's the cast for me. I think this is the best group out, even better than the original. I know that's like I said, that's going to be like one of the more controversial things, but I like the friend dynamic in this one. I think this is the best, even out of all five. That group of friends that they have is so much fun. I love the way that they interact together. It actually makes sense for how Sid interacts for once, which is a problem with some of the other sequels. No spoilers on that one, but I think this one has the most realistic interaction for how Sid gets involved. The other legacy characters, which is a term that I'll use now that Scream 5 has invented that, so I'll retroactively apply it to this one. They're not necessarily given as much to do, but like I said, their interactions are still pretty meaningful and worthwhile. But the one thing that kind of won me over for this was this is easily the most brutal of the brutal in the franchise. I don't know how they pulled off some of the kills in this. One of the major issues is who the actual killer is. I'm not gonna spoil it, but knowing who the killer is and knowing all of the brutality that emerged on display, it kind of makes it a little questionable. But in the moment, this thing is just absolutely fun. There's just so much to like about this one. It took me off guard a little bit with the fake out in the finale. That was one of my major issues with it when it first appeared. Also, kind of revealing who the killer is, kind of took me out of it for a sec. But once I got used to it and once I realized what was going on, there's a lot to like here. It's probably right up there with 1 and 2 is my favorite in the series. I'm Now that the 5 is out, or 6 is coming soon, I'd probably want to wait just to binge the entire franchise and just get them all done and see where I fall at that point. But yeah, this is definitely one that for me, rewatches definitely helped. So number 7 for me is Scream 4.
That is a solid pick. I wish it could have made my honorable mentions even because it's such a good movie. And you're right. As far as the Scream franchise today, the five movies. I mean, my ranking of best to worst is one, two, four, three, five. No, one, two, 1, 2, 4, 5, 3. But
Mhm.
it's amazing. And when I say it's the third best, it's so damn close to those first two.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I'm pretty close. I just I just swapped 2 and 1. I like 2 more than 1. But yeah,
yeah, I don't blame you for that though.
yeah, I like 2 more than 1. Reasons why I would have to go in depth on it, and neither the time nor the place. But yeah, yeah, they're like the three of them are right up there, and then there's kind of like a bit of a gulf between 3 and 5. But yeah, all of them are the top 3 that I have are right up there. They're really close.
I do love how brutal it is, and you're right, it's a brutal movie, and which was so good coming back into the Scream franchise after such a long hiatus after the third movie, which was so neutered when it came to the violence. But um, man, it's a great movie, and I love. I mean, Allison Brie's in that movie, and she can do no wrong. So I love it. I cannot fault you for that. It's not on my list, but it's only because I had to narrow it down to 10.
Understandable. Moving on to your number 7.
Okay, so my number 7 is one of the movies that I kind of played fast and loose with the rules, and some people aren't going to view it as a slasher. I say it's a slasher viewed from the victim's perspective. And my pick is another 2020 film, The Invisible Man. And the reason I think it's a slasher is because our our heroine played by Elizabeth Moss is she's so convinced that something nefarious is happening, but because of the nature of the killer, obviously he's invisible, that's the title of the movie. For the longest time she's kind of gaslit into thinking that everything's okay, and we as the viewers are along for that gaslit ride, to the point where there's a scene at a restaurant with her and a family member. And for anyone who doesn't call this movie a slasher, one of the pivotal moments in the movie where it goes from a dark suspense, gaslit, what's going on type of movie to a hard R slasher movie is when someone literally gets their throat cut. So, and that scene, whoa, man, that is one of the best kills of 2020. And from there on out, this killer ain't playing no games. Anyone who gets between him and his prize, which is Elizabeth Moss, feels that wrath and is on the block for execution. And again, the kills are brutal. There's a scene where he just lays waste to dozens of people in like a mental hospital, I think it was, and it's so good, man. Like that scene, it's actiony, but it's horrifying, and it really paints this killer as unstoppable. He's unstoppable, and it's the it's a good throwback to just the unstoppable force and our final girl, and it's so good.
Yeah, I when I first saw it, I wasn't much of a fan. I thought there was a lot of logic and internal issues like that didn't necessarily wow or work for me. When it works, I really do enjoy it. I've never thought of it as a slasher, but I'm probably gonna have to give it a rewatch and see how it stands because usually I kind of come up on films like this when I give them a rewatch. I haven't done that since I first watched it, but it's intriguing. I'm not gonna fault you for that one.
I think in 2020, the year it came out, I mean that's when the coronavirus hit everything. Everything shut down.
Yeah.
I watched this movie that year maybe 9 times,
Hmm.
and I loved it more every single time I watched it. And at first, I didn't think of it as a slasher, but the more I watched it, I was like, there are strong slasher elements to this movie that further
Yeah,
me.
I like I said, I never thought of it as such, but I probably want to revisit it and see if it does play out like that, because I do remember points where it did kind of feel, like Madman on the Lucy.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, I've only watched it the once, so I mean, I'm probably gonna rewatch it anyway. But trying to watch it in that lens, it sounds interesting. I'd have to give that a shot.
Yeah, let me know if that that going into that with that kind of expectation changes your experience in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, well, definitely will do. All right, so for my number six, I kind of really wanted to put these two together. I kind of thought that they were not necessarily symbolic in a sense, but I kind of just felt that they belonged together. In all fairness, I could probably drop this a little lower on the list, just because I think there's a bit more issues with it, but I'm still kind of comfortable with where I have it right now. I have number six, 2005's House of Wax. So remake of the original, or I should say a remake of 1979's Tourist Trap. A group of friends get together and go on a road trip for a special football game, but stumble into a small town where a group of serial killers, or I should say, it's eventually revealed that a group of serial killers are running around killing them one by one. Yeah, this is so much more fun than anybody ever really gave it much of a chance. I know that there was a lot of people talking about one scene in particular when it first came out, just because of a special socialite and that infamous one night that if you put those two jokes together, I'll probably you know bring the tissues out more than I really want to do so, but we'll leave it at that for now. But yeah, if you put that aside, there's a lot of fun with this. Revealing the killer and all of their various little tips and tricks throughout the course of the film is a fun touch. The cast is a lot of fun together. More A-list stars than I kind of really expect in this kind of a film. So it does feel a little bit more kind of a ensemble than what I really like in these kinds of films, where you don't necessarily it feels too pretty people-y, so it kind of takes a lot of the suspense out. But that final act is just amazing. I love that underground layer setup that they have. The kills are just fantastic. Like I said, far more brutal than you'd think. Some fun setups here and there. Like a lot of the tourist trap elements that are brought over are really fun and enjoyable, and it's a fun ride. I enjoy it far more than I have. I enjoy it far more on subsequent viewings. So uh, definitely earned a spot on my list. Like I said, in all honesty, I could probably put this a little lower, but there's a reason why it's number six when we come to it. So
Dude, I cannot fault you for that. I so wanted to have this movie on my list, and the only reason I didn't is because I really wanted to stay away from remakes. But I did have The Invisible Man on here. But I love this movie, and that whole socialite specific scene you're talking about. I refer to this movie as the second most famous time that Paris Hilton has taken a long hard rod to the face on camera. So
well,
um,
hey, I mean, you went for the X-rated joke. I kind of try to shy away from it, but I'm not going to fault you for it.
I, I don't hold
Yeah,
back, baby.
yeah, there you go. You made the X-rated joke that I kept PG-13, so
Yep.
good for you.
But I
Yeah.
mean, there's there's lowbrow humor in this, but it feels very studio influence, kind of formulaic. But the stuff that is in here, the brutality that's in here. I mean, you see the process of waxing. There's a part where super glue is used on someone's mouth.
Mm.
And oh my gosh, there's some hard stuff to watch in this movie. And it is, I mean, I think the killer, um, the appearance of the killer, there's a mask used, and I think it's freaky. I mean, his appearance is freaky. The killer's appearance is freaky. So I mean, it's a good movie. I know people give it crap and like, oh, it's not as good as the original, but you know what? Why don't you eat a bag of dicks? Just kind of enjoy it for a fun movie.
Absolutely, yeah. I had far more fun with it than I anticipated. So
Yeah, same.
yeah. So moving on to your number six.
All right. My number six is once again kind of a throwback to 80s slashers, so much so that the killer is actually played by famous 80s slasher icon Kane Hodder, and that is 2006 Hatchet, directed by Adam Green. And it's, the story of a madman running around in the woods, or the spirit of a madman running around in the woods in New Orleans, or not the woods, the swamp. And after a father and son go missing, the father, being played by Hijo de tu Madre. My gosh, plays Freddy
Uh,
Krueger. Robert Englund.
oh, okay. I know who you're talking about now. Yeah, I was about to say I was trying to think of him myself. Like, why am I blanking on his name?
I know, right? But yeah, Robert Englund has a small cameo in this movie. Um, Kane Hodder, who famously played Jason Voorhees, starting I think in the seventh film. But I mean, he's one of the most iconic, one of the most famous characters to play Jason, and he brought that same level of physicality, but in a different way because this killer is less, stoically shambling, power walking, never running type of thing. And this killer is just fast and brutal. Again, the kills are gory, the kills are awesome. There's this one part where someone gets turned into a Pez dispenser, and it stays on it. The camera just lingers on it. It in fact gives you like this 3D panoramic view of what's going on, and it's so damn good. I love this movie. It just this is one of the movies where I'll just throw on and do some stuff in the background and come back to it in special scenes, or if I'm feeling sick or if I'm feeling down, I'll throw this movie on because it's such a warm junk food type of comfort movie to me, that it's just one that I can come back to over and over and over and over again. I love it.
So yeah, we will talk about this one later.
Woo!
Yeah. So moving on to my number five. This was kind of the reason why I have House of Wax at number six. Unlike you, who wanted to stay shy away from the remakes, I lumped them together. My number five is 2003's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, another one that almost made. I mean, Jessica Biel's hips
Uh,
are amazing.
mm,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. But other than that, this is this is my favorite of the franchise, even including the original. This is my favorite of the films. I love the atmosphere here. I love it. I love Leatherface. He takes center stage. I love the kills. I love the. I'm trying to like shy away from this, and I don't know why, because everybody's probably seen this by now. I love the mean spirited nature of this. You've got Arlie Ermy as the sheriff. You've got, his fantastic scene inside the car. Just yeah, sorry about that. I mean, you've got that fantastic scene where he's, forcing that one victim in the back seat of the car, you know, putting his fingers inside the bullet hole and trying to get him to, confess to what's going on. But
mhm.
you also have that fantastic scene outside where, Leatherface shows up and he's wearing that one special mask, and it just lingers on it long enough for you to get an idea of where he got it and how he came about it, and it just adds this extra, dimension to him that you didn't anticipate before. But yeah, just overall, I have such a fun time with this one. I there's some fantastic set pieces here. There's a great stalking scene in the finale, that huge chase around the house and the barn house, where it kind of mimics that chainsaw chase in the original, where she's just screaming through the countryside, yelling in for life, and you've got Leatherface in the background just blaring that chainsaw like anything. But yeah, this is my personal favorite of the entire franchise. I had so much fun with this. I I really really love this one. I put it at number 5, the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake.
That man, I love this movie so much. Again, it was hard. The only reason I didn't put it on the list is because, like I said before, I was trying to stay away from remakes. But you're right. This is a solid, solid movie, and it is very mean spirited. I mean, this is not the Leatherface from the original movie, and he is mean. He is brutal. He is smart, first of all, and oh my gosh, that scene in the car. First, it opens up thrusting this group of protagonists into immediate conflict with the hitchhiker, and in such a way that there is no getting out of it. They need interference from law enforcement. They're like, period.
Yeah,
And it's just unfortunate the type of law enforcement that's in that town, and where that goes. But man, it's such a good movie. Aesthetically, it's beautiful. I I don't like it as it's not my favorite in the franchise. I'd probably say my third favorite in the franchise. Just because I love the original, and I know you didn't, but I really enjoyed this newest one that came out just in February, and then I'd
I
say this
I
one.
did like it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I was a fan.
Oh,
Yeah, to be fair, it's an honorable mention actually.
oh, sweet. I think it's an honorable mention of mine. It's hard to say because I'm not looking at that part of my list right now, but that movie, I think you can flip it around and have it be a spiritual successor to the 2003 movie, and it works just as well, if not better.
Yeah. I mean, she kind of does look like an aged Jessica Biel, so I mean, it's not necessarily that far out of the question.
Absolutely. I love it. And I mean, Jessica Biel is a looker and very easy on the eyes, and them that whoo, her pants were just at the right height. You know what I'm saying?
Any cinematographer that decided to place a camera at that particular angle, you sir are a god.
Yes, you are doing the Lord's work, good sir.
All right, so moving on to your number 5.
Well, here we are at the movie that's already been talked about, and it's my number 5 is Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon, and it's I mean, for all the reasons you said, it's smart. The documentary, that faux documentary type feel, uh, gives really intelligent dialogue to what another movie could have just been, really poorly delivered exposition. Um, the training montage, everything means something in this movie. Whether it's the training montage of the cardio, having to sprint while the victim is not looking at the killer, and then just walking when the victim is, I thought was so funny, just the funniest thing. But also, anti-burn cream, and it does take a sharp turn where it doesn't really feel like a documentary anymore, and instead just kind of goes the route of found footage and a fight for survival, but it works despite me not really being a found footage fan. And I think it's so good. This movie is just the probably the smartest of the meta slashers to come out since ever. This might honestly be the smartest, most cleverly written meta slasher in the slasher genre. It's perfect in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't disagree anymore. I mean, like I said, I would I feel really bad putting it as low as I did. I I'd all honesty probably have it right around where you have it. So yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with that.
Yeah.
All right, so kind of ironic that you have the comedic slasher at number 5 because I have one at number 4. Mine is 2004's Club Dread. So
Ooh.
yeah, I love this. I am a huge fan of the Broken Lizard group. I I don't think I've seen all of their stuff, but everything that I have seen, I usually I love, and I'm usually not a high comedy guy. I usually prefer like I usually prefer like mixture of everything. And this just hit me. I had so much fun with this. Just the over the top nature of the kills being rendered in a way that brings terror to people, but are just so goofy and comic and over the top that that there is a joke behind everything, and it usually hits it. The drug humor worked for me. I'm like I said, I'm not usually a huge pot humor kind of guy, but all the drug humor worked. The sexual antics jokes worked. But aside from all of that, when it's a serious and straightforward slasher, it works. The kills are brutal. The killer's constantly changing getup just makes it far more suspenseful, like who it actually is, and then just the way that there's like this mystery and build up as to who it actually is, and everybody trying to figure out, everybody's dead. Who can it be? And then, I legitimately didn't know who it was the first time. So, the reveal kind of caught me off guard when it first happened. But yeah, I had a ton of fun with this. It mixes comedy and horror pretty well. It's it's just a fun ride, and I'm really big fan of this one. So.
So this is a movie that is highly spoken of that I wanted to get to because I've never seen it before,
Mm,
but I really wanted to watch it because I figured it might be on my list if I were to watch it, but I haven't seen it. I wanted to get to it for this episode. I just ran out of time.
okay, yeah. So I'll definitely try to give Invisible Man a watch and see how that plays as a slasher. You let me know how this one is.
Will do, good sir.
All right, so your number 4.
My number four is a fantastic Halloween movie. It is 2016's Terrifier, the second outing of Art the Clown, the first being All Hallows Eve, but his first feature-length movie. And this clown is scary as shit. He is so damn scary. He is a and he doesn't say anything. He's very emotive. He's like very expressive in his face and his mannerisms. He's very jokey, but he never says a word, never a gasp, never an utterance of any vocal noise. Even when he experiences pain, he's always silent, and I think that adds to his fright, just his level of fear that he bestows on his victims. But on Halloween night, Art the Clown just picks two random girls and terrorizes them and anyone who gets in their way. And this movie again is it's a great throwback to 80s slashers. It's brutal. I mean, and if you really heard my podcast, you know how much I advocate for showing more penis in movies, and we do get some penis in this movie, so that's
Hmm.
always a plus. But you get skinning, you get decapitations, you get a complete ripping in half, cutting in half of someone hanging upside down. It is bloody and the fact that this clown is wearing all white and black, and whenever he's splattered with blood and like beautiful crimson just showing and contrasting on his white suit and white makeup is so damn beautiful. I love it. And this movie is one of my biggest reasons why I still advocate for the Terminator being a slasher, because he does use a gun in the movie.
Hmm.
And also, there is kind of a homage to Psycho, because there is kind of a false protagonist where the person we think we are following, we no longer are following, and instead we are following a new character. A player two has entered the game, as some might say. But it. Oh, I love this movie. It's simple, it's violent, it's bloody, and it is a fun ride. And I watch it every damn Halloween.
Nice. Yeah, it's honorable mention for me. I love this movie as well. Kind of runs a little formulaic, like you said at times, but that's kind of one of the only real drawbacks for it. But other than that, yeah, I'm totally on board. Just over the top in the best way possible. And I'm also like you. I have always said tits and dicks for everyone.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely on that board too. So they've shown it for us as long as they have. It's time for us to return the favor. I'm all in favor for it. So
That's right. Equal rights, equal sights. Let's get some dong swinging around in some movies, baby.
exactly. So moving on to my number three. This one I fell in love with it the first time I saw it, and it's one of the it's one that I never anticipated being as such. I kind of was expecting it just to be a simple throwaway film. I didn't really want, think I was gonna be anything more than that. But as soon as I was done with it, I was like, okay, this is just an absolute blast, and I had far more fun with this than I really should have. I went with Happy Death Day.
Oh,
So Groundhog Day is a slasher film. I was kind of initially like, what the hell? Like, how is this gonna work? But yeah, the way that this pulls off the repeating killer motif, I fell in love with it. Her character arc is just fantastic. I love the way that it changes who she is and what's going on, throughout the course of repeating the same day over and over again. And it's kind of one of the few things where I actually look at that as learning the lesson, because you actually do gradually see how she changes the course of the events every time she gets killed. Initially she's just that, brash, I don't care, just get out of my way and let me be me kind of a student. And then, she just gradually learns to, become more open and caring and honest. And I'm a huge fan of that. I love the way that, it brings about, a different side to her that we see, repeated over and over again. Kills are far more fun than I think that they had any right to be, considering it's PG-13, which, again, was another kind of, like, how the hell is this going to be any good, but it works in the context of what's going on. I love there's far more impressive stalking scenes in here than I ever anticipated giving it credit for. A lot of the stuff in the final act when she's finally, trying to get the one-on-one with the killer and finally bring him down, I had a lot of fun with. Far more, humor than I anticipated. A lot of the jokes just worked. I had just an absolute blast with this, and like I said, I didn't anticipate this to be as much fun as it was, but when I was done with it, I had such a fun time. It was an easy choice for me. So my number three is Happy Death Day.
so this is why I love the horror genre, because I don't like this movie at all. I've seen it twice and I could not get behind it. It's to me, it's like a Nickelodeon slasher movie, because I felt like the plot was just so like, oh, learn to love yourself, blah blah blah, and it felt like an after school special wrapped in a Nickelodeon slasher type film, because the kills were so so neutered. The violence isn't there. Um, I don't know. I just like it frustrated me because I saw a lot of potential in this movie and I wanted to like it. I just can't get behind it. And the reason I think that is because I just like a different kind of slasher movie. And I'm not saying this is a bad movie. I just don't like it, but I understand why people like it, and I can't fault you for anything you said. It's just I view this movie the way I view spicy food. The way I eat spicy food is if I walk into a restaurant like a Buffalo Wild Wings and they have like a spicy chart, like they list their menu on a scale of mildest to hottest, I consider that a personal offense to me, and I'm gonna jump my ass right up to the top of that scale and order the spiciest thing they have because that's how I roll. Now, there's some people that don't do that, and to them, like lemon pepper wings are incredibly spicy, but that's that's kind of this movie. It's the lemon pepper wing of movies. It has its audience, it has its purpose, and people are gonna like it. It's not a bad movie, but I expect more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I mean, like I said, I went in with the opposite expectation. I was kind of like, this ain't gonna be good any good. How is this gonna work? A PG-13 mainstream slasher film with, it's just Groundhog Day, with a killer running around. How's that gonna work? I can totally see where you're coming from. I mean, I do understand, the lack of brutality and gore in the kills. It is very much PG-13. It is very, catered to that crowd, but for some reason it just worked for me, and I had such a fun time with it. I loved her character arc. I love the way that, it went about doing the days repeating, and her catching on to what's going on and trying to outwit this killer, and then all of a sudden there's that second reveal at the end where we get, I didn't mention it, but there's, a second killer that's actually going around. But I don't know why it just worked for me. But it's not one of those where I'm like, fighting tooth and nail for people to see it's a brilliant film. It's like, all right, you didn't like it, cool.
Yeah, it's not for me.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I watch a lot of stuff that other people don't think is for them, but I had fun with it. So it's just one of those. Okay, yeah, whatever, cool. So if it
Yeah.
didn't work, I'm not, gonna sit there and fight tooth and nail for you to see the brilliance in something. I don't expect people to sit there and fight for that. So it's one of those. I understand your flaws from it. I completely agree. I just it worked for me. That's all I can say. So
Yeah. And I
so
mean, and movie experiences are personal, so yeah, of course,
yeah,
like lists are it's all opinionated, man.
exactly, yeah. It's not a problem. I mean, if I told you my top 10 of all time, I'm pretty sure you'd get some weird reactions too from that. So like I said, it's all subjective.
Absolutely. Like some people will die on a hill claiming that The Shining is one of the best movies ever made, and I don't like it.
Okay, well then we're gonna die on that hill alone because I think it's incredibly overrated and not that interesting.
Woo!
But we'll table those for other conversations. Let's move to your number three.
All right. My number three is my first um international movie, or foreign movie. And it is 2010 from Hong Kong. It's a Cantonese movie called Dream Home, and it's about like the housing crisis in the country and how hard it is to find some place to live, and like waiting lists, and you could be waiting years and years and years just to have a home. And it's a movie about the lengths that one person will go to in order to expedite her weight on one of these lists, let's say, or make room for the dream home. And I love this movie because It is, a lot of the movies I've talked about are the stylized and they're goofy, they're campy. This movie is set in a stark reality. It is kind of mean spirited, and the kills are brutal. They look so real. And anything, I mean, this killer has a utility belt, and anything from screwdrivers, zip ties, obviously knives, vacuum storage bags can be used as brutal implements of murder, and no one is saved. Doesn't matter if you're young, old, or possible spoiler alert, pregnant. Like nothing, absolutely nothing, is going to stand in the way of this individual and her dream home. So this movie is one of the best, I think, not just modern day slashers, but honestly might be one of the best slashers ever freaking made. It's amazing. And yes, it is in Cantonese, and some people aren't going to like that because you have to read the movie. But if you're the kind of person that doesn't like to read your movies, you know, put your big boy or big girl pants on and get over it, because you are gonna freaking love this movie. It, like, I don't care if you don't like subtitles, watch it because it is amazing. It is a solid 10 out of 10. I would rate it higher if I could, but it is amazing.
Yeah, I've only seen this once, so I don't have the fondest recollection of it. I do remember having very, very, very little wrong with it. It was a great time. I wish I was a little bit more familiar with it because I've only seen it just the once. But yeah, I'm like you. I love I vaguely remember having a great time with it. I just wish I was a little bit clearer on it. So it's one I'd want to rewatch before I can say anything more. I do remember the brutality and the kills involved, so that kind of sticks out. But other than that, I really can't say much more about it. But yeah, I have a feeling it would be on my list as well if I was a little bit more familiar with it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I recommend this movie to everybody.
Yeah. Cool. So to our final two, they've kind of already been spoiled because they're on your list. But I don't know if you've remembered or aware of the order. But number two for me is Freaky. Yeah, this is another one. For some reason it just worked. The body swap angle is just amazing. I love the chemistry between all three of the big characters in here. Their friendship is fantastic. I love the way that they all play off each other. Just hysterical stuff at times. I love just all of the family bonding at home and trying to pass off what goes on as her trying to avoid suspicion while her mother and sister are involved in the house and not knowing who she is. I love just the friendship dynamic between her other friends trying to convince the rest of the student body to listen to the strange adult that's following them around. Her crush and all of her friends are trying to figure out who this guy is, and they think he's the killer, and they're not aware that she's actually the killer and that they've swapped bodies. But yeah, this is just an absolute blast. I had so much fun with this. It's just slick and stylized and fun. The kills are great. There are tons of jokes, lots of humor. It's just a fun time, and I had just an absolute blast with it. So my number two is Freaky.
Yeah, it's a sweet movie, man.
Definitely. So moving on to your number two.
My number two is another foreign film, and both the previous film and this film I found out from legendary horror podcaster Jay the Dead. Shout out Jay. Um, and this movie is a French, it's part of the French extreme movement. Came out in 2007, and it is Inside, and it's about a woman who's being after the loss of her husband in a terrible car accident. She is pregnant on the day before she is due to go into the hospital to deliver her baby. the night before, which is Christmas. So it's a Christmas movie. Um, she is at home, stalked by another woman who intends to cut the baby out of our protagonist to steal it. And it is a terrifying premise. And I have my own podcast, Headlong into Monsters, and my co-host Ashley, constantly makes fun of me because I love brutal, violent, mean-spirited, disgusting movies that like kind of will dim the light of your soul. But I can't help what I like. But part of what I like is when symbols of innocence um, are attacked and sometimes murdered, and the fact that the premise of this movie entirely revolves around this baby who's not even born yet, is the one who is in the most danger because the goal is for this woman to cut the baby out of its mother, for a kidnapping. And it cannot get scarier than that, man. Like what is a clearer symbol of innocence than an unborn child? And this movie is brutal because anyone, I keep saying this a lot, but anyone who gets in this killer's way is dispatched in the most violent of fashions. And I tell you, this movie has a bleak ending, and I am here for it. The further this movie goes, the more blood there is on the walls, the more red there is on the screen. The You think a movie's not going to go there, and it goes to places where other movies dare not tread. It's such a great ride. And it doesn't matter whether it's family, strangers, coworkers, the police. No one is safe from this woman. No one is protecting is enough to protect our protagonist from this woman who, by the way, walks around in a beautiful dress with a. She wears a corset at the beginning, which I'm always down for a corset. I think they're fucking beautiful. But man, I love this movie so damn much. Thank you, Jay, for those last two movie recommendations. I don't think I would have ever found them. Well, this one definitely I would have found on my own, but the last movie probably not. But man, this movie is so damn good. I love it. Perfect 10 out of 10.
Yeah. So this is kind of why I think we switched roles because I'm not as big a fan on this one. The parts I do like are everything you mentioned. I love the brutality. I love the just absolute relentlessness. I love just the way it plays out. To me it feels very much like a anthology short stretched out to feature length, so it's just contrived and it just goes on too far too long. Like to me it just needed a little bit more to sustain its running time. It just feels like there's way too many contrivances and conveniences to keep her alive as long as she does, because as relentless and brutal as that girl is, she's getting in that baby far sooner than she does. But it's one of those. It's not necessarily one that I really fault the movie for. It's just one of those where, I mean, like you with not liking Happy Death Day. For me, I just feel like there's something missing, and it just kind of drags the film down for me. Not enough to like completely dismiss it, but I'm not as high on it as some of the other films from that era. So
I get it. It seems like the premise seems so simple that it like some people aren't going to believe that you can make a full length movie out of it. For me, I'm just along for the ride so damn much that
yeah,
the contrivances. I mean, it's kind of like Home Alone. Like I don't care that Kevin McAllister rigged his house up with booby traps in the time it take him to make mac and cheese, but I'm here for it. I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah, I mean the ride is great, and I love where it goes, but it's just one of those, like you said, it just feels like there maybe needs to be something else, like maybe like her, like have like her family, like her, like her mother or sister, like maybe somebody else like there for her just to like make sure that she gets to the hospital on time, and then they get stalked and they get like dragged into it. I think if it would have been something like that, I wouldn't have had that much of an issue with it because it would have felt a little bit more natural, like to have somebody else there just to make sure she gets to the hospital, in one piece, so to speak. Because she is far along as she is, she's about to pop any second, so they're gonna want to be there, even more so because of what just happened with her husband. So to her to be alone the way she is, I to me that kind of part just feels like a little weak. So maybe having like her mother, her sister, or maybe like some other friends there just to help make sure that she gets there, and then they get dragged into everything. Wouldn't have. I feel like that may not have been a bad way to go, if you were going to make a feature length, but I don't know. Just there's always been that one thing that just it nags at me, and I don't know why, but it's not enough to drag it down. I still really enjoy it, and it's hard not to love the brutality in this. I mean, the way she goes off is just fantastic, but yeah, it's just not. There's just something missing for me, and that's just kind of one of the things that just nags at me about it. So.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I don't fault you for not being as high on it as I am. I don't know, maybe I'm so blinded by the brutality, but I mean, I don't care. I love it. But like I
uh,
said, I don't fault you for not being as high on it.
So with that, that brings us to the other one that we mentioned. My number one that you had on your list earlier, Hatchet. Yeah. Oh God, that Pez dispenser kill that just sealed it for me. I was along for the film from that point on. Not that it didn't win me over before, because I I was just such a fan of what Where was before. You meet all these great characters. You have that just amazing opening that just sets the tone for what's going to happen. And you get that opening kill where he hacks the couple to pieces, and turns he rips the one shoulder off and then turns to the other one and pulls the head apart like a soda can. I was just on board. And everything else that just transpires here is just so much fun. It's just campy and fun, and the brutality is there whether or not you find it scary or not, but it's just a great time. It's just a fun, over the top, and just absolutely fun slasher, and it's just a blast. I mean, like you said it best, it's just a fun ride. I'm here for it. So yeah, my number one is Hatchet.
Yeah, I man, it's so I mean, it could be my number one. It could be my number one. It could be an honorable mention. Like I said, my list fluctuates and will fluctuate so much. That's what I love about horror movies. So yeah,
All right, so go moving on to your number one.
my number one is not only um a near perfect modern slasher, but it is the only movie on my list that is a sequel. And it is The Collection from 2012. And it's a sequel to The Collector. And while I think The Collector is more of it is a slasher at heart, but to its core, it's more of a home invasion movie. This, The Collection, is absolutely a um a slasher movie, and it is brutal because we are in the home of the killer. We are exploring not only um the sadisticness of the killer, but we are by being in his home, we are exploring the mind of this individual and how messed up it is and how chaotic it is, and everything he does with the people he kills and with the people he chooses not to kill is absolutely disturbing. Don't get me wrong, there are still some funny moments in the movie, and it is stylized to the point where you can't take it too seriously, but it is so damn good. And honestly, I want more of this killer. There is there. I mean, there's been another movie slated for several years now called The Collected, where the story of this killer continues, and I want it. I want 5, 7, 15 more movies with this individual. I think he has the makings of one of the best modern day slasher icons, and I cannot praise this movie enough. I love it so damn much that I completely forgot to say the premise of the movie, and it's just following the events of the first movie where someone is abducted from a home invasion. The killer, I guess, through an elaborate trap set in a nightclub, abducts someone else. This time, the daughter of a well-to-do, I guess, was it a politician? I think I want to say yes. Um, but with this individual, this politician, this well-to-do individual having the money and the resources to send someone to come save his daughter, who has been taken by the collector, they enter the home of the collector and find themselves in a situation that they can't handle. That's one of my favorite tropes in not just slasher movies, but any kind of movie, is when a group of people who in any other situation would go in, kick ass, take names, chew bubblegum, and absolutely wreck house, get their asses handed to them because they are completely unprepared for the situation they are walking into. And I love that trope in this movie. I think it works so well. Yeah, I just the kills are great, the traps are great. I love it. And our main character Arkin, who was the main protagonist in the first movie, is back in this movie, and he is one of the smartest, final boys that I've ever seen in a slasher movie, because he makes all the right choices, all the best choices, and he is, completely capable of going toe to toe with this seemingly unstoppable juggernaut of a killer, and I love it.
Nice. I wish I could say anything. I haven't seen this yet. Kind of it was one that slipped by me just because I wasn't. The early part of the 2010s were kind of a weird part for me, where I was kind of, yeah, I hadn't gotten as much as I wanted to at the far end of the decade. So the end of the 2000s. So I was kind of a little. I kind of backtracked from the genre a little, so I'm not necessarily as familiar with a lot of the stuff from the early part of the that decade, and I'm trying to get caught up with a lot of that stuff. I mean, obviously I've seen, like, the main, like the main stuff, but like a lot of the other, like, honorable mentions, or like, the lower tier stuff, it kind of slipped through the cracks for me, and that was one of them. So it's one that I've definitely been wanting to get to. I haven't had enough time. Too much other stuff gets in the way, but
Mhm.
I'm definitely intrigued to get to it, because I did have a lot of fun with the first Collector. It was one of the few that I did like from, like the late part of the 2000s. So I'm definitely intrigued to see where it goes, just because I did have a lot of fun with it. But as for the Collector, I haven't seen it yet, so I'm definitely interested in seeing that now that it's number one. So
Yeah, I recommend it, man. And please let me know what you think when you finally get around to watching it.
yeah, all right, will do. So before we get on out of here, do we have any honorable mentions left? I know that we had a lot before, so if there's any left now, just for a quick shout out, go ahead and shout them out.
So I do have quite a few honorable mentions. In fact, despite me wanting to put some of the movies you mentioned on my list, those movies didn't even make my honorable mentions list. So I still have all of my honorable mentions.
Nice. Yeah, I've got a couple. If you want to go first.
Yeah, absolutely. So my honorable mentions from like 20 to 11, I guess, would be Wolf Creek 2 from 2013. I think it's great kills, and I think the killer is very sadistic and, a great follow up to what was a great low budget movie. So there's that, but I also have Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2022. Um, Even though I think the 2003 version is the better film, I think the 2022 is more fun and I enjoy it more. So, I wanted to give that one into my honorable mentions. I also have the Furies from 2019, where it's multiple killers and multiple victims, and there's like a weird connection between them. And I think it's really cool. It plays with perspective, and there's skin suits involved, but I think it's a really fun movie, um, that is worth a watch, definitely. I also have You Might Be the Killer with 2018, and honestly, this could have made my list because it has the beautiful Allison Hannigan, who I have had an absolute crush on her ever since she played Willow from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And it's another great slasher killer in the woods, but with a hard meta self-referential twist to it. And I just love it so much. But when it came to meta slashers, I had to give it to Leslie Vernon. That's the only reason it didn't make my list. I also have The Collector from 2009, which is the original list. I mean, like I said, it's slasher at heart, but at its core, it's a home invasion. So I couldn't really justify putting it on my top 10, although it easily could be. I also have Halloween Kills from 2021 because I thought the kills were really fun. I thought the callbacks to the first movie and the running franchise as a whole was you know perfect, and I really enjoyed this movie. My only problem with it is it's not a great standalone movie. You really have to watch it with Halloween and Halloween 2018 to get the full experience. But still a great movie. I also have Mindhunters from 2004, and it again plays on the trope of people who should excel in a given situation, but for one reason or another are unequipped and ill prepared to handle what is thrown their way and find themselves at the mercy of a twisted killer. But it also has one of my favorite lines, and if you know, if you've seen it, it's you know the line when LL Cool J at the end says, "I guess we know what his weakness was, bullets." And I just find that so damn funny. Um, but I also have My Bloody Valentine 2009, the remake, solid remake, great 3D effects, um, brutal kills, a good whodunit, kind of keeps you in suspense. I love this movie so much, and I'll watch it whenever the hell I get a chance. I also have You're Next from 2011, which, by the way, I have been watching since we started recording, and I just finished. Like, I just watched the credits a couple minutes ago, and I know it's a home invasion movie, but it's it's kind of a weird home invasion movie that takes a twist because the home invaders are become the victims and the slasher becomes, you know, the final girl. And I think it's fantastic. It has one of my favorite final girls in any movie. I think she's fantastic. It's great. And my last honorable mention is Freddy versus Jason from 2003. I saw it in the theaters, and everyone gives this movie shit because, like, oh, it's not what they wanted, blah blah blah. And I'm like, eat a bag of dicks, man. This movie is like having a Jason Voorhees and a Freddy Krueger action figure, and you're playing with them on the floor, and you're doing these in your mind these super ridiculous plots where they're having to fight each other. And this movie is exactly that. It's like watching my imagination come to life. And that scene at the very kind of the end where they have their last showdown, and that metal guitar just comes in and they're face to face in that burning cabin. Oh my gosh, I lost my shit in that scene. I love it so damn much. So those are my honorable mentions.
Nice. You actually had two of mine. I also had You Might Be the Killer. I kind of left it off for the exact same reason, actually. Behind the Mask did the meta slasher better. So yeah, that one was another one on mine. I also had My Bloody Valentine. That was another one. So kind of pass those off for some of the other stuff on my list. So I had Wrong Turn, the original, the 2003 one. I had a lot of fun with that and wanted it on the list, but couldn't put it at the end. I also had the Friday the 13th remake. Again, a lot of fun, but just too many slots. Couldn't put it on there.
Mm-hmm.
I had one called Girl House, which
Yes.
I really enjoyed. That was another one that it was a it kind of fell victim to there's only 10 slots kind of a thing, but I really enjoyed it and I had a lot of fun with it. And then the last two, kind of an odd choice, but I had this one uh, I remember really, really liking this, but I've only seen it the one time and I haven't been able to find it since. So I couldn't in good conscience put it on the list because I didn't know much about it. Was a film called Lumberjack Man. I think it's from 2015 or 16 or somewhere in there. Um,
Is
I
is the is it Lumberjack Man, The Legend of Paul Bunyan?
No, I think that's Axe Giants.
Oh, that's right. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's Axe Giant. Lumberjack Man is, if my memory is not failing me, and I have very, very, very little reason to trust it, but I'm gonna go with what I do remember. It's sort of a parody slash semi-serious take on the summer camp films. It's about a group of people who arrive at a summer camp, and the legend of the camp comes true, and it begins killing them one by one. But it's kind of played as like a parody, sort of, but it's treated seriously. It's really weird. I really wish I could be more a little bit more about it. Like I said, I've seen it once, and it's always been one that kind of stuck out as I remember having fun with it, but I really wish I could be a little bit more familiar with it. So that was kind of why it bumped it down. I would love to be able to find out where it was I saw it because I would want to revisit it, and I don't know why it sticks in my head the way it does, but it was one of those when I was doing research, it kind of popped out and was like, oh yeah, I remember that one, and then why do I remember this one? But like I said, my mind is playing. My mind, I don't know if I can trust myself with what I remember, but I really for some reason, like I said, the title just sticks out for me as something I enjoyed. So would love to revisit it. And then the last one, I couldn't justify putting all three of them on there, but the Fear Street trilogy, I had such a blast with that. The third one kind of brought it down just a tad, but even still, I had so much fun with the three of them. It was kind of hard to leave them off, but I felt putting all three on the list was a cheat, so I kind of took them off and left them as honorable mentions. But yeah, other than that, don't have much else. So yeah, this was a blast, man. I'm really glad we got to do this because this was as much fun as I thought it would be.
Absolutely. And full disclosure, I kind of realized that I was using the wrong microphone for the majority of this recording, so I really hope my audio came out okay. Um, but I about 20 minutes ago I switched to my actual studio microphone, so I'm sorry if the beginning of this is kind of a headache. I mean, if you ever want to do this again or do another collaboration, I'm more than happy to be a guest anytime and just talk about movies and movie lists because I mean, I love horror.
Yeah. I don't have much of an issue with it. I was actually kind of I didn't even notice. I thought it was an internet kick on your end. You switched off, and that was kind of the reason why. But I personally, I don't have much of an issue with it. So we'll just leave it up to the listeners and let them know if that is an issue on their end, because it's not on mine. So, but
Absolutely.
yeah. Other than that, what you said, I completely agree with. Yeah, I had so much fun, and I'm definitely down for anything similar to this in the future. Yeah, you're definitely welcome back anytime.
Thank you, man. And thanks for having me on to talk about modern slashers because the horror movies are filled with great slashers, good slashers, bad slashers of any time period. So for anyone to think that the only good slashers were ever in the 70s, 80s, you know, that's inherently wrong because I
Yeah,
love talking about these modern slashers. There's so many amazing slashers, like you said, the Fear Street trilogy, Random Acts of Violence, The House that Jack Built, Killing Ground, The Devil's Candy, House of Wax, High Lane, Frontiers, Malignant, Wolf Creek, the first one, Severance, Cold Prey, Dubro Party Massacre 3. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. I just had a blast talking about movies
yeah,
with you, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
yeah. My pleasure. Yeah, like I said, you're definitely welcome back anytime. So for those that are interested in more, where can they hear you, you and your work?
Well, I do have my own podcast. It's called Headlong into Monsters, where me and fellow, uh, what we call ourselves, elderly emos, because we were both like the weird emo kid in high school and junior high, and we never really grew out of it. So we're just elderly emos, and me and my good friend Ashley, we host that show together, and you can follow that. You can find our podcast again, Headlong into Monsters, pretty much wherever podcasts can be found. You can also follow it on Twitter at Into Monsters. That's in the number two monsters. Um, we do, or you can follow me personally at Raul versus Monsters. You can also follow my letterbox at Into underscore Monsters. And as far as the podcast goes, we just talk about movies that we want to talk about. We usually have a theme for the episode, or sometimes we just pick whatever the hell we want to talk about. We've done some Universal horror movies. We are planning to do some dive into some Tim Burton stuff here in a bit. We kind of took a hiatus because Ashley had a tragic loss in her family that her father passed away, so we took a hiatus. We're going to be coming back here in a bit. We're just kind of planning that out, but we release an episode every other week, and please check us out because we just talk about the most random shit. We almost never stay on topic, and it's pretty fun.
All right. I will have everything linked down below for you all to have easy access to and check out if you're interested. And like I said, you're welcome back anytime. So this was definitely a blast. And until next time, we will see you with the next episode. Take care.